Bravo, ragazzi. So, Mr. Ambassador, microphone.
Oh, okay. Good evening, everyone. This one?
No.
How is it now? Okay, great. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our embassy. Dear Richard, Barbara, Nancy, Tom, dear friends, it is a great pleasure to host again in our embassy this special event to celebrate the life and poetry of William Meredith. William was closely related to Bulgaria and presented and promoted many Bulgarian poets in the United States. And this year we are celebrating, especially this night, we are celebrating our two awardees. Tom Kirlin, who was given the special William Meredith Award for Poetry, and Mrs. Barbara Goldberg, who was given the Valentin Krustev Award for Translation. And I'm very grateful that William Meredith Foundation has been so active over the years in promoting Bulgarian poetry and culture in the United States. And Richard and Barbara were in Bulgaria. In May, they participated in the Poetry Festival in Plovdiv, and I hope they could share some impressions from this event. But once again, welcome. I'll stop there and I'll give the floor to whom? To you or to...
I guess me, yes.
Okay, to Richard. The floor is yours, Richard. Thank you.
I'm a very anal person, so I go by the minute, by the minutes. If it's 6:40, it must be time to thank the ambassador and look at his wife for this beautiful place, this venue, which was declared the permanent home of the William Meredith Award for Poetry. And they insisted on calling it the Dmitry Peshin Plaza. It's not really a plaza, but it is the corner house, and this was the Minister of Justice who saved 48,000 Bulgarian Jews during that terrible period. So it's particularly appropriate since Barbara's written so beautifully about Israeli poetry and Israel and has a feeling for that country. There are some board members here. Grace Cavallari is here, who's the Poet Laureate of Maryland. She's been recently minted as the Poet Laureate of Maryland. And Karen Alanier is here, the poet. And Jean Nordhaus is here, a number of wonderful poets. So we're grateful that they were able to come. But as I said earlier, it's really great for me to see, I know the poetry community, but I haven't met a lot of these nice folks. So it's really great to see how the audience is expanding. Nancy Frankel's here. She's our treasurer and a sculptor. This is the year of William Meredith. We've been having a number of events, including an exhibition of Nancy's work at the Katzen Center at the museum there. It was a great show. They did a great job. So these are only two of contemporary things for the year of William Meredith. He would have been 100 years old this year. And our goal is to keep his memory alive. When the great ones die, they fall off the planet often. You never hear from them again. And so what we're trying to do is to keep his, because when he was a pilot in World War II and in Korea, and when you gain that much experience and wisdom, it seems a shame that it just gets knocked over for the next best young thing that comes along. So we're grateful for the opportunity. So, Tom Kirlin. Tom's here with his family, Catherine, and children, and nieces, and I have my calling card out there by the programs if you want to take it, if you want, books are not for sale here. But these books here are gifts, the poets of Bulgaria. The books by Tom and Barbara are demonstration copies only, please. So don't let those disappear. But the others can disappear. First come, first serve. Let's see. We'll start with Tom, and I'll say, and I'll try to be brief. But you know, it's hard. It's not easy for a poet for it to be. We have new curtains here. Congratulations! It's great. This room. It's really nice. So it's coming. Tom.
Yes.
Well, it's beautiful.
This is the inauguration of the...
Yeah, we christened it. Marjorie Goldberg is here. Look at you. She's a great gallerist and art sculptor. Have a seat, Marjorie. Enabling Love, Tom's book, traces Tom Kirlin's long journey toward a deep understanding and empathy for the poetry of William Meredith. It is an appreciation based on years of friendship between the two poets, in a format that is as complex as the mind of Meredith himself. Like an exquisite jigsaw puzzle or crossword, Kirlin plays with language through puns, synecdoche, broken and word fragments, and provocative enjambments to give heightened meaning to Meredith's poetry. The style is challenging, but worth the effort as we follow Kirlin's exploration and the loving attention he gives to his colleague in the art. It is a fitting centenary tribute to a poet who has been described as a national treasure and lucky inheritance. We are equally lucky to have Kirlin's intense, magnifying glass, enabling love. So, and I'm thinking of Nikolai Barbasr, who's a great Bulgarian poet, and one of the things he did was he fragmented lines, and it might not sound like a great, it's like the Morris Louis School of Painters here, who put oil on the canvas and a halo of oil spread out. A small innovation, but nevertheless something major, you know, and I think that this was Barbasr's gift to Bulgarian poetry, and looking at Tom's work, I think something of that. I could take a lot of time here to describe all of Tom's achievements, but it's all in here in the program, okay? Who this man is, his work, and his wife is here. They created a wonderful book for the Smithsonian on cooking, and they've done all kinds of things. Tom's with the Center for the Study of the Presidency, and he's a major figure who's come up lately as a poet. So I think, Tom, with that nasty introduction, don't you hate? No, Jimmy Carter was traveling with Rosalind at one point, and she listened to this blah, 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 blowhard for a long time. And finally she said, well, I must say, sir, of all the introductions I've had, that was certainly the longest. Tom, come up please and take the stage and give us about...
All 45, I believe. Let's just say that an elegant man in a loose blue nightcap, with nothing on his mind but the sky, surprised us, tracking game by starlight, shot us all in the blind, made off with the lamps of madness implying, scattering as ransom his palpable absence, which only time can refine, swirling her honey head, making our bed as constant as taxes and crime. So welcome if you can, ladies and gentlemen, an old roommate of yours and mine, the son of a gun, a hell of a guy, a cat whose ass rattles buckshot, your spirit, your soul, and mine. That is a variation on a poem that I had written earlier in a book called When the Potato Moon, and recast in the current tribute called Enabling Love. Before I go further on William, I want to acknowledge not only the ambassador and the embassy and his wife and staff, but also the many good things that Richard and the foundation are doing. Richard touched on Nancy and Grace, very accomplished, and Jonah over here is on board as well doing our video. Scott Price is not here this evening, but he is working on a biography of
William, Richard has helped promote. Another student and former member of the board, Michael Collier, had an event up in Connecticut College where William taught. And Nancy began the year in January with Nancy at 90 at Castle Center here in Washington. So these programs go on, but it was launched really when Richard wrote an article in Poet Lore, because we were poets know well, as one of the oldest literary magazines, also published here in the area. And Richard recently won an award for a script he's writing that ends, it's an intergenerational between World War I and World War II. It ends with one of the protagonists, Katz, meeting William at the end of his, or the beginning of his life, joining World War I, or World War II, I should say. In any event, as mentioned, William was someone who had the experience of World War II as a naval pilot, largely reconnaissance, and then also as a pilot in the in the Korean War. And his books began in 1944 with Letter from an Impossible Land, and then another book, that was 1944. His second book was called Ships and Other Figures from 1948, but I believe he really begins to define himself as a poet, and really what I wanted to do was understand who he was and how he developed as a poet, especially as he, if you will, transitioned from the air and water to land and poetry and teaching as he taught for a number of years at Connecticut College. And I think one of the things that's most noticeable is a poem early on in his award-winning, Pulitzer Prize-winning book called Partial Accounts, which I would like to just describe the beginning of the poem, because the rest of the poem will be read by others later. And it says, poems are hard to read, pictures are hard to see, music is hard to hear, and people are hard to love. Now, the poem goes on, and others will finish it for you, but largely that is regarded as a wisdom poem. But I take it as a deeply autobiographical poem. Someone coming from war, trying to find their way, trying to read poetry, trying to see pictures, trying to hear music, trying to love people. To me is a deeply personal autobiographical poem, which applies to us in many different circumstances. Another poem from that third book that I think is very illustrative is one called The Illiterate, which I will read, called Touching Your Goodness, I am like a man who runs a letter over in his hand. You might think this is because the hand was unfamiliar, but truth is the man has never had a letter from anyone. Now he is both afraid of what it means and ashamed because he has no other means to find out what it says than to ask someone. His uncle could have left him the farm, or his parents died before he sent them word, or the dark girl changed and wanted him for the beloved. Afraid and letter proud, he keeps it with him. That, what would you call, his feeling for the words that keep him rich and orphaned and beloved. To me, that is the case today. Richard has passed, and he is orphaned, his words are orphaned, and yet he is beloved. And so our question is, how do we go on and learn how to love the words, as Richard said, and live on beyond his passing. And one of the other poems that strikes me in this book in 1958, after his return from the Korean War, is called The Ballet. And very briefly, he described it as a cage of light to go to ballet. And he talks about us as an audience in the paunchy darkness, which to me is just a marvelous line. And then he says that yet it is not only the perfection that drains us in the paunchy darkness, it is pity too, that they must signal that way like eloquent mutes. Yes, no longer affliction of splendor, that it cannot reproduce its kind. So each piece of art is unique, it cannot reproduce, but it nonetheless binds and brings us in to that cage of light which illuminates. Another poem, I think also from this, what I would call the most significant of his early works, is the one called A Korean Woman Seated by a Wall. And he asks the fundamental question every art asks, whether it's dance or poetry or music. And that is, this line is, what is it in suffering that dismays us more? The capriciousness with which it is dispensed, or the unflinching way we see it born? It's a stunning line. It should be over every hospital front door. I'll just read a second line, second first paragraph, maybe a second before. And he defines himself what he is. A poet penetrates the dark disguise after his own conception, little or large, crossing the scaleless Asia of troubles where it seems no one could give himself away. He gives himself away. He seeks a scale. Hunger and pain and death, the sorts of loss, dispute our comforts like peninsulas, of no particular value, but places to fight. And what is it in suffering dismays us more? The capriciousness with it is dispensed, the unflinching way we see it born. He then goes on and describes this older woman with her jade and having lost her 4 sons to war. It begins to look and sound like Keats's Grecian urn, only it is shattered jade at the end. And he says, she shifts the crate she sits on as the March wind mounts the sea. The sun moves down the sky perceptibly like the hand of a public clock, in increments of darkness, though ablaze. Ah, now she looks at me. We are unmasked and exchange what roles we guess at for an instant. The questions, who comes next and why not me, rage at and founder my philosophy. Guilt beyond my air, and a grace past my grief, alters the coin I tender cowardly, shivers the porcelain fable of green shards. To me, he is a realist of astonishing sensibility, and he does ask us to meditate those questions in a way that he had, being in the Navy, a chance to do so in the next called major poem called The Wreck of the Thresher, which was written in 1963 following the downing of a nuclear sub. So what I'm trying to, and he ends that poem with a wonderful line that says, the ocean was salt before we crawled to tears. And that's sort of the evolution of humanity. What I try to do in the book, as Richard so kindly pointed me back toward, is to follow that progression of William as he makes his ascent into what I would call a meditative state of poetry. William Meredith is not a lyricist, he's not a narrative poet, but he is a meditative poet in the way that, say, Augustine was a meditative philosopher in the Confessions. So to me, I read him at that level, and I find him making these transitions as he goes. I will add 1 or 2 more poems and then move on. Read which one? The Catfish? that was the Catfish. I know. I started with the Catfish poem. I will read instead the one more that William wrote that I think is key to understanding how he gets to enabling love. This is the end of a poem called Last Things. Thank you.
It was longer than I thought, so.
No, it's all right. I'm fine. Thank you so very much. This is called Last Things. It's dedicated to Robert Lowell, and this is shortly after the death of Robert Frost, one of his other mentors. At the edge of the Greek world, I think, was a cliff to which fallen gods were chained, immortal. Time is without forgiveness, but intermittently he sends the old sentimental hungry vulture compassion to gnaw on the stone vitals of each of us, even the young, as if to ready each of us, even the old, for an unthinkable event he foresees for each of us, a reckoning our own. And in his reckoning, as Richard will recall, was a moment where Richard and William sensed the house they were in was slightly haunted. And so William begins to write about those spirits that he now is among. And the poem begins, enabling love, roof of this drafty hutch, of children and friends and pets, and chiefly of the dear one asleep beside me, the warm body house I sack like a Hun nightly in your service, take care of the Hans who stay with us here. What I do in my poetry book is try to draw out some of those key points as he progresses toward finding love as enabling agent. Just like partial accounts is both biased, it is partial, but it's also incomplete. But it's a wonderful Pulitzer Prize winning work. Enabling love is both something we help do, we help enable love, but once we are loved, we are enabled by it. And I think that's one of the things I try to communicate in the book that I wrote, which began, since Richard insists I do say something about it. Right, okay. From enabling love. March or April, there will be frosts, parades, complaints, a float of buck-naked baby, dreams, floating up Kennebunk Street. As a chill brick wind cuts its sharp teeth on the pink innards of you and me, where far too many poets lie dead in paradise, Wyoming. That's the way the poem ends. I will end with a poem which takes on the question that I raised in The Illiterate, which is a poem which I call a listening poem. He realized he is being listened to, and he's both illiterate and beloved. And I call it The Muse and the Gentleman. Touched by illiterate longing, he was like the man who would lay a hand across her heart. And you might think this is because his hand was unfamiliar. But truth is, she had never had a man who was a friend. Now he is both afraid of what she is and does, and interested because she says she is a dancer at a downtown gentleman's club. It's the Muse. She could touch his arm intimately or not. He could send flowers or flowery words to her hotel room saying he is coming or not. He thinks he talks too much and is not beloved. What do we call this awkward silence that stands now between dead poets, honest praise, and us? We the living, naked and afraid, they humble revenants. Aren't time and death sufficient to meet the requirements of love? True remembrance is neither rich nor poor, nor orphan, nor vain, nor ignorant. Death is well read. Remembrance, pensive, private, unsettled, awake, irreverent, deep inside us. In death, true friendship becomes neither sleep nor sufficient. Once among the living, William has become a muse. Your daughter, my son, a love among us for words, born well after high school graduation. This morning, online, feeling orphaned, she looks for empty spaces. His grave is full, my page undone. A wicked wink, and her will is won. We write for less literate daughters and sons. Still, she's touched, at teardrops, perhaps in sorrow. She looks hard at you, he at us, and laughs off these slight bumps, but not first before turning and sticking us with a wry, untimely smile. You, Sir William Penn, will never be forgotten. You who wielded a pen and a tongue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. I don't agree by thank you very much, Tom. I recommend this book to you highly. It's a strange book. It's a challenging book, and it's one which I think you will. If you want to order any of these books, by the way, my calling card is right out there, poetschoice.com, to have any of these books. We can't sell books here at the embassy, but they're really worth having in your armamentarium, I guess. Now I'd like to introduce Tatiana Karajova, who is, I think, the first secretary of the Bulgarian government, the political attaché. And she's going to read in Bulgarian so that you can hear the language, a poem by Valentin Krustev, who's the second award. This is his translation, so I would appreciate your hearing.
Yeah. Шедьовър. Стихове трудно четем, слаб за картини е взорът. слухът за музика, глух и трудни за обич за хората. Но било по нагон вроден или осенени отгоре, най-после ум, взор и слух и голямото мудно сърце ще се трогнат.
What comments refer. Poems are hard to read, pictures are hard to see, music is hard to hear, and people are hard to love. But whether from brute need or divine energy, at last, mind, eye, and ear, and the great sloth heart will move. And it's become a kind of a characteristic poem. Thank you for that. So now we introduce Barbara Goldberg, who is this year's Valentin Krustev Award for Poetry. Here is what he looked like. He was a great guy. This is the medallion for Valentin. He fell off of his chair a year ago at his computer, and there's a whole description of how important he was to me and William as our, what's it called? It's called not an amanuensis, but a cicerone. He introduced us to Bulgaria, to the political currents, to what was really going on there, to life in Bulgaria, how people eat, how people love, the whole thing. He was really our connection to Bulgaria. So we're really honored to be able to recognize him. This will be every 2 years. We'll give a translation prize, and Barbara won it this year for beautiful work, which I'm going to try to introduce. Let's see, Barbara. I mean, I have the whole, thing, but I'd rather, I think, read a couple of things. Myra Sklarou, who's a great local poet and a wonderful person, she's written, "Languages are living organisms," according to George Steiner. Barbara Goldberg in Transformation comes into her true landscape as she moves between languages, exploring the evolution of her interests and profound journey. At long last, she can call on her multiple resources, poetry and prose, humor and tragedy, life in this century cast in the shadows of 19th century Vienna, the hidden memories of loved ones, even the dead who can't keep a secret. Myra Sklarou from the introduction. I should say a word about this Valentin Krustev Award. The introduction to Barbara's book and who he is, it's in here, it's in the program, so I encourage you to take a look. I won't read it now, but let's see, Barbara. There's something else here I wanted to say about you. With Moshe Dor, Goldberg has translated 3 books of Hebrew poetry, including Scorched by the Sun, poems by Moshe Dor, The Fire Stays in Red, poems by Ronnie Slomik, After the First Rain, Israeli Poems of World and Peace, The Stones, Remember, an anthology of Hebrew poetry translated by Goldberg and Dor, won a Winner of Foundation. She's very prolific. She's been a force in poetry here in the community for a long time. And she just gets bigger and better and more important, Barbara. So why don't you come up and take a seat and read to us from your book.
I don't know what I'm going to do. I mean, I'll stand for a while and then I'll sit and then I'll stand again. This reminds me of E.E. Cummings' poem, one of my favorites. And down she forgot, no, and up she forgot as down she grew. That's as you get older. And I feel like I'm growing down because I get shorter each year. Well, the first thing I want to say is it's so great to be back in Bulgaria.
All right, talk about Plovdiv a little
Yeah,
bit.
because isn't this Bulgarian? Can't every Bulgarian here come here to vote? Yes, this is Bulgarian soil. And I have to say that I had no idea about anything about Bulgaria until Richard and I, well, that was an adventure, until we got a chance to go. And one of the first things I noticed about the language is that it's very blah, 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 blah. And even Plovdiv, I thought, my God, what is that? But Plovdiv turns out to be quite a modern